My brother loves me very much that he buys me beautiful dresses, cooks delicious meals, and holds me, saying I am his most precious treasure. But I never dreamed that my cold and dignified brother would. After I fell asleep, I woke up in the morning feeling slightly sore, as if I had just finished running 800 meters. Rubbing my eyes and getting ready, I looked in the mirror, my face crimson, like a rose full of water. The neckline of my pajamas was slightly open. In a glance, I noticed a red mark about half an inch below my collarbone, as if it had been bitten by a mosquito. Without much thought, I applied some medicine. While applying it, I drowsily thought, would there be mosquitoes in the new house? It looks like I'll have to ask my brother to buy some mosquito coils. Just as I thought of my brother, there came 3 polite knocks on the door. Following that, my brother's melodious voice rang out, "Cece, it's time for breakfast." I responded, opened the door, and greeted my brother with a smile. "Good morning, brother." The man in front of me was 25 years old, wearing a soft t-shirt and pajama pants. He reached out to pat my head. "Good morning, Cece." My brother was 8 feet 2 inches, 20 centimeters taller than me, making it easy for him to pat my head. I sat down beside him at the dining table. On the table were breakfast made by my brother, with toast topped with my favorite chocolate sauce. I accidentally got some on my hand, and without thinking, I extended my tongue to lick it off. Then, as I looked up, I met my brother's slightly obscure gaze. My brother was very handsome. With smooth fair skin, black and deep peach blossom eyes, a high nose bridge, and lips that were often pursed. Despite his inviting appearance, his inherently aloof and indifferent demeanor made him hard to approach. Meeting his almost suffocating gaze, I trembled slightly, quickly grabbing a napkin. "I'm sorry, brother, I will be more careful next time." I hung my head, like a young student who had done something wrong, unaware that my brother's dark gaze was fixed on me for 3 seconds above my head. He cleared his throat, emitting a lazy hum from between his breaths, then said to me softly, "Give me your hand." I obediently extended my hand. My brother didn't use a napkin, he always carried a handkerchief with him. Seeing my hand, he took out his handkerchief and gently wiped it for me. His hand was large, with well-defined joints, perfectly proportioned in every inch. In contrast, my hand, firmly held by him, was small and soft, being rubbed back and forth by him as if boneless. After rubbing for half a minute, my older brother was satisfied and told me to continue eating. By the time I finished, he had already changed his clothes and was tidying up. He was now wearing a white shirt with a black suit, looking smart and imposing, with his slightly messy hair combed back, revealing a smooth forehead. He casually picked up a tie and started to tie it up methodically. I stared at him for 3 seconds, suddenly remembering a description my high school roommate had used once. "Aesthetically reserved." Seeing me staring at him, my brother softly said, "Aren't you going to change clothes? Do you want to be late on the first day of school?" I quickly got up, absent-mindedly tugging at the collar of my pajamas, muttering, "All right, I know, brother." The next moment, my brother's gaze lingered on my collarbone. Confused, I looked down and saw the red mark, now turned into a dark red, very conspicuous on my gleaming white skin. "Oh, brother, I forgot to tell you about this. It seems there are mosquitoes at home. Could you buy a couple of mosquito coils on your way back from work?" My brother's eyelashes seemed to flutter, his hand that was tying the tie slightly tensed. Then, he faintly uttered, seeming completely unconcerned about how there could be mosquitoes in the new house. When I came out after changing my clothes, my brother had already cleaned up the kitchen. Standing in the living room, looking at the clean and tidy house, I suggested to my brother, "Brother, why don't we hire someone to cook and clean for us? You're so busy every day, doing all these chores will surely take up your time." Wiping his hands with a handkerchief, my brother calmly said, "It's okay. I've suggested this a few times, and brother has always declined." Hearing this, I nodded, not having the chance to say anything else. Suddenly, my brother walked up to me, his tall figure enveloping me. He lowered his head, his handsome face close to mine, so close that I could smell the faint fragrance on him. I didn't know what perfume it was, but it smelled nice. He reached out his slightly cold hand and expressionlessly pulled up my collar. "Is it wrong that there are only 2 of us at home, Cece?" I stared at him blankly, feeling that my brother was acting strangely now. Or maybe it was me who had become a bit strange. Yeah. My brother's fingertips were icy cold after touching the water, and as he helped me straighten out my clothes, he lightly brushed my neck. It felt cool and refreshing in the hot summer, making me squint my eyes. His hand paused at my neck. Then he slowly said, "Get dressed, Cece, don't let others see." Leaving the residential area, my face was still burning intensely. My brother drove away, repeatedly asking if I wanted a ride before leaving. I quickly waved my hand to refuse. My brother was the CEO of the largest gaming company in the country, busy every day. He was already struggling to take care of me, so how could I burden him again? Moreover, from today onwards, I was a university student, and my brother was not my real brother. I had to learn to be independent and not rely on him for everything. Yes, my brother was not my real brother. My name is Maria Anna, and my brother's name is Christian Edward. When I was 5 years old, my parents passed away, and his father brought me to the Edward family to live with them. At that time, my brother was already 11 and was an outstanding young boy. However, he used to be cold when he was younger, unlike now when he was relatively gentle with me. The headquarters of my brother's company was in the capital city. Before the college entrance examination, he would spare 2 hours every day to give me extra tutoring to help me get into a university in the capital city. Thankfully, I didn't disappoint and got into the capital city. As a reward for my achievement, my brother bought me a nice apartment in the best neighborhood near the school. And surprisingly, he moved in to take care of me as well. A grand CEO living in a modest 100 square meter apartment. I remembered what my high school roommates said about CEOs in novels living in grand villas and estates, and I felt even closer to my brother realizing how modest he was living for me. Half an hour later, I arrived at the school. Today, I had to pick up my campus uniform. The clothes were sorted by class, so I obediently lined up at the end of our class queue. Before long, another person came over and stood behind me. His aura was so strong that I couldn't help but look back. He was a tall young man with red hair, dressed in a basketball jersey and holding a basketball in his hand. His fair face was slightly sweaty, most likely coming back from the basketball court. He emitted heat all over his body, like a furnace, making me involuntarily shrink to the side. The line was moving fast, but it got stuck in front of me. The girl in front of me seemed to have lied about her weight, causing her to struggle with the medium-sized campus uniform. She was arguing with the person distributing the uniforms. Just because I gained a little weight, you can't give me a larger size? The weight was measured last week. You gained 20 pounds in just 1 week? Don't joke with me. All the items were prepared in advance. Where can I find an extra XL size for you? I don't care. I paid for it. If I can't get the right size, I will complain to the school. The argument between the two made it impossible for the students behind them to receive their items. Everyone was watching the drama unfold without urging them. Just then, the red-haired boy behind me suddenly slammed the basketball fiercely. Take it or leave it. If you don't take it, get lost. Ah. The sound didn't come from the girl, but from me. His basketball didn't hit her, but ended up hitting me instead. I panicked and tried to dodge, accidentally twisting my ankle. After coming out of the infirmary, the boy had a sour expression on his face. My foot was fine, just needed to rest for 2 days. While it wouldn't affect the start of school in 3 days, he still felt responsible for my injury and decided to assist me in going to and from school for the next 2 days. I initially refused as I didn't like to trouble others, but he didn't agree, lifting my arm and carrying me to the classroom as if holding a baby chick. Because we delayed for a while, by the time we entered the classroom, it was already full of classmates, with only the seats below the platform still empty. The boy seemed to be quite popular, as whispers started circulating as soon as he appeared in the classroom. It was him, the boy who made 7 consecutive three-pointers on the basketball court, and he looked even more handsome up close. Is the girl next to him his girlfriend? Just a poor guy, I checked. Victor doesn't have a girlfriend. All day, I endured the attention brought to me by Victor and finished the classes in great agony. After finishing self-study in the evening, I planned to sneak out from the back door quietly. But just as I took 2 steps, Victor grabbed my clothes, fiddling with his phone without even looking up. He asked me, "Where do you live?" I hesitated and said, "You don't need to drive me, I can go back on my own." "On your own?" He raised his head, glanced at my ankle, sneered, "So you can delay serious stuff until tomorrow and ask me to help, huh?" I am not that free. After that, he repeated his question, and I had to reluctantly reveal the name of the residential area. Victor paused playing with his phone and said, "Atlantis?" "That's the name of the complex." "Oh. I also live there." "Perfect." Putting away his phone, Victor grabbed my arm and without any display of tenderness, he led me out. With his tall figure and long legs, he walked faster, and I struggled to keep up, staggering along. Victor clicked his tongue in annoyance at my slow pace, took 2 steps forward, crouched in front of me, and said, "Get on." I hesitated for 2 seconds between being dragged by him and being carried on his back, then slowly climbed on. Victor exercised regularly and had excellent physical fitness. His muscles were just right, firm and a bit discomforting, so I shifted slightly. What are you doing? Can you keep still? He scolded. We walked out of the school, only to find out that he had driven there. As he pushed me into the car, he suddenly blurted out, "Maria. Ha, why are you so soft?" He frowned, showing his straight male confusion, as if boneless. Do you not eat normally? Me, although Victor's words were harsh, he was still responsible. He carried me all the way back to the door of my home. I rang the doorbell. At this time, my brother should be back. Sure enough, the door opened half a minute later. My brother was wearing a t-shirt, with a gentle expression as he opened the door. However, the moment he saw Victor, his eyes narrowed suddenly. It was strange. My brother clearly did not show any signs of anger, but in an instant, I felt the temperature around me drop. My brother's gaze towards Victor inexplicably made me feel scared. I climbed down from Victor's back, limped over to my brother. He then noticed that I had twisted my foot. The next moment, my brother, in front of Victor, unabashedly hugged me. Not the gentlemanly side hug, but enveloping my whole being, as if trying to cover up any trace of Victor's presence on me. Victor had not intended to say hello. He was about to leave after putting me down. But seeing the possessiveness in my brother's stance as he held me, he suddenly stopped in his tracks, feeling a strange sensation welling up from the depths of his heart. After looking for 2 seconds, Victor suddenly said, "Maria Anna, I'll come to pick you up tomorrow morning." As my brother carried me towards the couch, upon hearing this, his arms tightened suddenly. From my angle, I could only see his slightly lowered eyelashes and his tense jawline. In the kitchen, a pot of soup was simmering with bubbles popping up. In the living room, my brother was half kneeling on the carpet, his knobby hands gently removing my socks. His fingertips were cool as they touched my ankle, causing an itch. I couldn't help but flinch. "Don't move," my brother's voice was somewhat hoarse. "To heal quickly, we need to apply the ointment properly." I whispered, "Brother, I can do it myself." But my brother continued as if he hadn't heard, dipping his onion-white fingertips into some ointment, gently massaging my ankle. It was itchy, with an indescribable sense of comfort. Brother's fingers are magical. With just a few rubs, the lingering pain in me miraculously disappeared. From my perspective, I could only see the soft top of my brother's head. He hung his head, deep and surging emotions concealed beneath his eyes, and I didn't know what he was thinking at that moment. I asked unconsciously. Brother gently lifted his head, his fair face bathed in a soft light from the lamp, clearly warm, yet I couldn't shake the sense of coldness. Brother was probably thinking, "Cece has made a new friend." I hesitated for a moment, subconsciously replying, "Not a friend." "Well," after applying the ointment, organizing the first aid kit, brother calmly said, "I don't oppose you making friends, but that boy just now didn't seem very honest. Cece, you've always been good since you were young. Brother doesn't want you to get hurt." Brother was always considering me. A softness washed over my heart. I bent down and, as always, nestled in my brother's arms and coquettishly said, "Of course, I know, brother. Don't worry, my foot is much better now. I won't let him send me tomorrow." Okay, I don't know if it was my illusion, but brother's voice seemed to soften a bit more. Although I was the one who hugged brother first, as soon as I nestled in his arms, he held onto my waist and hugged me tighter. Even when speaking, I felt his slightly cool and soft lips seem to intentionally or unintentionally brush against my neck. Feeling a bit uncomfortable, I shifted my body and softly said, "Brother, is the soup in the kitchen ready? I'm hungry and want to eat." Brother let go of me. His face was a bit red, his dark and moist eyes as if soaked in water, making him look somewhat moody. Brother was hungry too. He said softly, "Brother wants to eat you." I doubted my ears. But when I looked up, brother had already gone into the kitchen. I must have misheard. How could such a gentle person like brother say something so possessive? After dinner, I held my phone and went online for a while, and soon it was already 10 o'clock. The older brother walked into my room with mosquito incense and a cup of milk. "Cece, drink the milk and go to sleep." I was filling out a form, so without looking up, I said, "Just leave the milk on the table, thank you, big brother." Back when I was with the Edward family, I used to drink a glass of milk every night because the maid said it helps with sleep. After moving in with my brother, it was my brother who reminded me to drink milk. He didn't say anything, just left the milk on the table and walked out. When I finished filling out the form and walked to the table, I accidentally bumped into a book next to it, causing the milk to spill on the carpet as well. I felt embarrassed to trouble my brother, so I quickly took the carpet to wash it clean in the bathroom. When I came out and saw the empty milk cup, I wrinkled my nose. Oh well, it's okay not to drink milk for one day. After cleaning up, I lay down on the bed and soon fell into a deep sleep. In the dead of night, with all sounds gone, a beam of light suddenly pierced the pitch-black room. With a click, the door of the room opened, and a tall black shadow slowly moved to the side of my bed, overlooking me lying on the bed. I dreamt that I turned into a steamed bun. The soft bun skin was kneaded and patted in someone's hands, then it was put into the steamer, and hot steam hit my face, causing me to swell and become unbearable. After a long time, I finally came out of the steamer. The person tasting the bun looked intently, as if appraising an artwork, before taking a bite, and the juicy, tender filling oozed out. I suddenly woke up. Dizzy with the bright light in my eyes, I moved my body, and a shadow suddenly cast over me. Cece, had a nightmare? My brother's voice came from above me. My mind was still a bit foggy, and I looked over with blurry eyes. My brother stood by the bed in pajamas, his neckline slightly open, revealing shiny collarbones, his hair messy on his forehead, his eyes dark and moist, his lips seeming to have a hint of moisture. Startled, I tried to sit up, but I found my body sore and weak. As if all my bones were loosed, I had to cover myself with the blanket and asked drowsily, "Brother, why are you in my room?" My brother's voice was hoarse. "I heard some noise in your room, so I came in to check on you." I blushed and lowered my head. The sensations from the dream and the feeling in my body now overlapped, and in front of my brother, I felt an inexplicable sense of shame. I just had a nightmare. Thank you for your concern, brother. You should go to bed now. Brother responded, but his steps didn't move. He stood by the bed, looking down at me from a height, with his deep and dark pupils, carrying a sense of oppression that made it hard for me to breathe. Brother? Suddenly, brother bent down and lightly pressed his cheek against mine. The slightly cool temperature touched my face, and I froze for a moment, feeling my cheeks quickly heat up. It's hot. Brother suddenly spoke, his voice gentle, whispering in my ear, making my heart tremble. I shrunk back a bit, saying, "Is that so, brother? Maybe you haven't woken up completely. I'm really fine." Brother nodded, ruffled my hair, didn't get close again this time, and stood up, saying, "Rest well." Before leaving, he took the milk cup with him. The next day, brother offered to drive me to school. After we finished getting ready, when we reached the door, brother suddenly remembered something. He opened the door while leaning down in the entrance. Cece, help brother straighten the tie. I looked down. Brother had a trash bag in his left hand and car keys in his right, indeed not having a free hand. My feet were still a bit sore. I could barely stand by the entrance with my hands for support. If I wanted to free a hand to help brother, I could only lean my body against his. What's wrong, Cece? Brother saw me in a daze, raised his wrist to check the time. It's getting late. Do you want to be late? Of course, I didn't want to. After all, brother is brother. He used to carry me often when I was young. Thinking of this, I suppressed the slight embarrassment in my heart, took 2 small steps and squeezed into brother's arms, saying softly, "Brother, let me help you. Can you lend me a support?" The suddenly lowered voice came from above my head. It was not difficult to tidy up the tie, so I raised my hand and untied it before readying it properly. However, just at that moment, a slightly urgent footstep could be heard approaching the door. Following that, Victor's slightly surprised voice came, "Maria Anna, what are you guys doing?" I was startled and looked at him in a bit of a panic. Victor was standing at the doorway holding a basketball, his gaze scrutinizing. For some reason, in the face of such eyes, a sense of shy secrecy arose in my heart. Compared to my flustered state, my brother appeared much calmer, as if he had seen it all before. "Cece, you didn't tell him about what we talked about last night?" He asked. "I don't have his contact information," I explained while fixing my brother's tie, and then said to Victor, "Brother is giving me a ride today. You can go. You don't have to bother in the future." With a basketball in his hand, Victor stood on the stairs, slightly looking down, and gave a meaningful glance at my brother. "All right." At school, my brother escorted me all the way to the classroom, patting my head. By this time, many students who had morning classes at 8 had already arrived. Seeing my brother, a few girls became so excited that their faces turned red. They pushed each other to look in this direction. When they saw me being supported by my brother, disappointment was evident in their eyes. However, my brother seemed oblivious to their looks. He supported me as I sat down next to one of the girls who was alone, and after a moment of thought, he tapped the desk in front of her. Can I ask you something, classmate? The girl with black-framed glasses raised her head hesitantly, blushing, and stammered, "Well, what?" In a cold and indifferent tone, he said, "Maria Anna has trouble with her leg. If she needs to go to class or the restroom, could you please look after her? I'll pay you for it." Saying this, my brother asked the girl to open her payment code and transferred 2,000 yuan to her. It was an unexpected windfall, and the girl had no reason to refuse, so she quickly nodded and agreed. I didn't want to trouble my classmate, so I blushed and tugged at my brother's sleeve, trying to say he didn't have to do it. However, my brother turned his back to me, then reached back and caught my misbehaving fingers. He held them tightly, turned around, and patted my head. "Behave, I'll have someone bring you lunch at noon, and wait for me after school in the evening." This scene was seen by the others, and they gasped, with someone being nosy and asking, "Maria Anna, is this your boyfriend?" "He's so caring." My face turned even redder. I wanted to wave my hand in denial, but my brother's grip on my hand tightened. He stared at me for 3 seconds, then glanced mysteriously at the person speaking, without explaining anything, and then turned and left. The scene happened to catch Victor's eye as he walked into the classroom. He furrowed his brows and looked at me countless times with a hesitant expression. Finally, after the second class ended, he stopped me in the classroom. "Maria Anna, is that your real brother? Why do I feel like the relationship between you two is a bit strange?" Upon hearing Victor's words, my first reaction was panic. Then, a feeling of being offended emerged. "What do you mean by that? My brother and I grew up together since childhood. It's normal to be close. It's your own dirty thoughts." I'm usually soft-spoken, but saying something like that already makes me angry, I retorted. Victor crossed his arms, seemingly unaware of my anger, and continued, "I have a sister too, why wouldn't I want to hug her? And hold her tightly like your brother does to you? The way your brother looks at you is too abnormal." "Maria Anna, shut up." My face turned crimson, my chest heaving dramatically, and I sternly said, "Victor, don't insult the relationship between my brother and me. Not every sibling in the world is like you and your sister." Victor stared at my flushed face due to anger for 2 seconds. Ultimately, he retracted his somewhat imposing demeanor, shrugged, and said, "All right, maybe I spoke without thinking. But Maria Anna, I really think the way your brother looks at you is not right. I'm a man too, I would know. His possessiveness towards you doesn't seem like a brother's should be. My brother is just protective of me. Why do you have to judge without knowing the full story? He may have a weird way of expressing it, but he has my best interests at heart," I muttered. Victor remained silent for a moment, took a deep breath, and asserted, "Your brother definitely has some strange thoughts about you. Think hard about your interactions with him. Has he ever done anything that goes beyond the boundaries of sibling relationship?" Victor's words are very magical. Even though I didn't want to pay attention to him, I still uncontrollably followed his words to think. The way my brother looked at me, the temperature of his fingers when he touched me, and the dim eyes of my brother that I saw in a daze last night. For some reason, my face was getting redder and redder, all the way to my ears and neck. Victor, seeing this, chuckled. "I knew it, you two must have a problem." "No, I don't." "Even if you don't, what about him? He's a man, after all." I fell silent for a moment. Then, as if thinking of something, I raised my head angrily and glared at him. "What's it to you?" Victor stood by the wall, his red hair foaming in the sunlight. He looked at my face and chuckled to himself. "Why is it not my business?" he said. "After all, I want to pursue you. If your brother really has any intentions, that would bother me." I raised my head in shock, met his teasing gaze, furrowed my brows, and said, "That's not funny at all, stop it." After saying that, I leaned against the wall and hobbled towards the classroom, while Victor grabbed my arm but then let go in time. I looked at him in confusion. He smiled at me, showing his 2 canine teeth. "Maria Anna, how about we make a bet?" From that day on, Victor, as if possessed, began openly pursuing me. We lived in the same neighborhood, and he deliberately waited for me at the neighborhood entrance every morning and evening. Even if I ignored him, he would come up and chat with me. Sometimes he would knock on my door, and in my bewildered expression, he would hand me a bag of fruit or a dish made by his mom. After a few times like this, my brother also noticed something was off. One night, after Victor brought me a small cake. As I turned around, I met my brother's rather gloomy gaze. He held a ladle in his hand, lips slightly moist as if he had just tasted soup, and hurriedly walked out of the kitchen. "Cece, him again?" my brother asked expressionlessly. Faced with this expression of his, for some reason, I felt guilty. Oh, he said it was from a friend's birthday. Didn't I tell you to stay away from him? I did stay away, but, no buts, my usually gentle brother, today seemed somewhat dominant, with a slightly heavier tone. We are about to eat dinner, so stop eating this junk food, give it to me. I shrank back instinctively, and my brother, seeing my reaction, darkened his gaze abruptly. Then, he suddenly raised his hand, expressionless, and snatched the cake from my hand, unhesitatingly tossing it into the trash can. My face turned pale. The way my brother acted, inexplicably made me feel scared. Perhaps my expression was too unpleasant, as my brother stared at me for 3 seconds, his demeanor instantly softening, his tone returning to its previous gentle state. Cece, brother didn't mean to be harsh on you. Brother is doing this for your own good. Brother doesn't object to you making friends normally, but he can't. I lifted my head in confusion, the usually compliant me experiencing a hint of rebellion for the first time. Why can't he? You're still young, you don't understand. The boys outside have ill intentions towards Cece, wanting to take you away from brother. He suddenly said with a hint of paranoia. My heart trembled along with his words. At that moment, I suddenly recalled what Victor had said before. His brother's feelings towards me, truly extraordinary? I fell into contemplation. It seemed like my brother didn't want to dwell on this topic for too long. He took a deep breath, then lifted the spoon in his hand towards my lips. All right, brother doesn't insist on restricting you. Let's not argue, okay? Come on, Cece, try the soup brother cooked today. I instinctively opened my mouth, following my brother's lead to drink the soup. It was delicious. My brother slightly curved his lips, revealing a smile once again. Good, if Cece truly wants to eat cake, brother will buy you one tomorrow after work. Well, let's wash up and have our meal. He arranged in his usual tone. I followed him, completely unaware that the soup in the spoon was only half full. In other words, my brother had drunk half of it himself before feeding me the rest. After the meal, my brother cleaned the table, handing me a cup of hot milk. Drink up and go to bed early. I sat on the couch, holding the cup of milk, watching my brother's slender figure. Victor's words resurfaced in my mind. After a while, I stared at my brother's back and tentatively asked, Brother, when you said you wouldn't interfere with my friendships earlier, does that include relationships with boyfriends? My brother's figure suddenly froze. It was strange, he hadn't said anything, but I could feel a storm brewing from him. My brother slowly turned around and sat down beside me. Cece, are you thinking about dating? Have you chosen someone? I quickly shook my head, not yet. I just heard my classmates discussing it, so I... Oh, brother, just forget I said anything. My brother still held a certain authority in my heart, similar to our parents. Talking about romantic relationships in front of him made me feel like a primary school student caught doing something naughty. I couldn't believe I had tried to test his reaction like that. I must be crazy. Shaking my head, I wanted to quickly finish my milk and retreat to my room. However, before I could even pick up the cup, my brother took it from me and walked to the kitchen. In a calm voice, he said, The milk has cooled down, let me heat it up for you again. Cece. After finishing the milk, I returned to my room and played with my phone for a while. Strangely, a few days ago, I wouldn't feel sleepy until after 10 o'clock, but tonight, it was just past 9, and I was already yawning incessantly. Unable to resist, I washed up and went to bed, feeling thirsty before sleep. I drank some more water, only to wake up in the middle of the night feeling the urge to pee. My mind was still fuzzy. But I could clearly feel a warm and damp sensation on me, moving and getting hotter gradually. This feeling coincided with the sensation of turning into a bun in my dream. After a moment of hesitation, I suddenly opened my eyes and looked up. There was a person lying on top of me. He had a slender yet powerful figure, and the strong scent of masculinity surrounded me, almost instantly penetrating my brain, making my body feel incredibly weak. But I finally found my voice. I trembled and spoke softly, Brother, are you there? My voice was barely audible in the pitch-black night, making it seem out of place. My brother froze for a moment, then slowly lifted his head, his eyes shining brightly in the darkness. Cece, you're awake, he said. I thought he would explain, panic, or show remorse, but he did none of those. My brother just calmly got out of bed. His voice sounding particularly hoarse at that moment, I tightly wrapped myself in the blanket, my eyes suddenly red, looking at my brother whom I was so familiar with, yet felt so strange about after what he had just done. Why did my brother do this? How long has this been going on? Were all those times I woke up feeling sore because of him? Countless thoughts swirled in my mind, tangled like a knot. My brother stood by the bed, gazing at me intently. Neither of us spoke. After what seemed like an eternity, his hoarse voice broke the silence. Cece, about what I did, I don't want to make excuses for myself or apologize. I made those decisions fully conscious, and if you hate me, I can slowly make it up to you. I just want to say, Cece, can you try to? I covered my ears. Let me calm down. I know what you're going to say next. But I couldn't bear to listen. How did everything end up like this? My brother had always been so good to me. Why did he have those thoughts? What if our parents found out? They would surely think I'm a bad kid. My brother gave me a complicated look, then turned to leave. After a few steps, he abruptly turned back, took a few steps towards me, and wrapped his arms around my shoulders. Cece, don't blame yourself, her brother said. No matter what decision you make, the one who should take responsibility is me. You just need to follow your heart. I won't force you in the future. Take your time to think it through, okay? His palm felt cold. I was startled and instinctively pulled back. After her brother finished speaking, he sighed and gently kissed my eyelids. Your brother believes in you. That night, I couldn't sleep. Her brother had said to give her time to think and that he wouldn't cross that line until she made a decision. But something had changed in my heart. I started avoiding her brother. I stopped going out with him in the morning and hurried back to my room at night. Her brother noticed everything but didn't say anything. He just followed her gaze, which grew darker and darker. This state continued until the end of the year. One day, as I walked out of the classroom, a girl suddenly grabbed my arm. She looked very anxious and said as she pulled me along, Maria Anna, you have to find a way to stop Victor. I was puzzled. What's wrong? The girl replied urgently, he has a fight arranged with someone from outside school. I investigated, and the other person has some background in the underworld. They won't go easy on Victor this time. It'll be bad if they really fight. I never liked getting involved in trouble, so I shook my head immediately. No, I'm not going to. She glanced at me pleadingly. Please, I'm begging you. Can you go and stop him? He likes you, so he'll listen to you. If it really gets out of hand, just run. It's a matter of life and death, Maria Anna. You can't stand by and watch someone get hurt. Her sincerity made me feel too awkward to refuse. After some thought, I nodded, okay, but just so we're clear, if things get out of hand, I'll have to run. But when we arrived at the scene, Victor and the other person were already fighting intensely, and it was a bloody mess. The other person was a rough-looking thug, covered in tattoos, wielding a bottle and recklessly attacking others. Victor's group consisted of students, clearly at a disadvantage. Seeing the chaos, there was no way I could stop them. Without a second thought, I turned and ran. Who knew that in the next moment, Victor suddenly grabbed my arm and pulled me behind him. Thanks to him, two thugs immediately noticed us and started to approach us from different directions. Victor looked serious, and with a tense expression he said, Maria Anna, don't worry, I will protect you. Me, does he think he looks cool doing this? If it weren't for him suddenly rushing over, I would have fled by now, right? However, it was too late to say anything at this point, because as soon as the other party heard how much Victor valued me, two more people rushed over, both holding bottles and chairs in their hands. Victor was decent at martial arts, but being outnumbered 4-1 with me in tow was obviously a struggle. I took the opportunity to crawl under a table, but unexpectedly ran into a blonde guy head-on, who, with eyes gone red, took out a knife from somewhere and charged straight at me. When faced with a huge shock, the body becomes stiff and one cannot react. Maria Anna, I could only hear Victor's hoarse voice full of fear ringing in my ears. I slowly closed my eyes, tears streaming down, and in that crucial moment, I suddenly thought of my brother. If my brother were here, he would definitely protect me. With a piercing sound, the noise of the knife piercing flesh resonated. Startled, I opened my eyes only to find that my brother had appeared out of nowhere and, with a swift movement, took the blow meant for me, kicking the thug 2 meters away with a back kick. My brother swiftly dealt with a few more thugs trying to get close to me, then he took out his phone, made a call, and led me away from the scene. I followed silently behind my brother, staring at his arm pierced with a dagger, blood dripping down and staining his shirt a vivid red. My nose instantly tingled. Brother. I wanted to say something, but didn't know what to say. My brother put me in his car, looked back at me, and touched my head with his uninjured hand. Don't be afraid, it's over now. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly tilted his head and fainted. In the VIP room of a private hospital, a few doctors hurriedly walked in. I immediately stood up, anxious, and asked, "Doctor, how's my brother?" They reassured me, saying, "He's fine, just fainted from loss of blood. The wound has caused an infection, and he might have a fever tonight, but as long as he pulls through, he'll be okay." I let out a deep sigh and turned my gaze back to my brother lying in the hospital bed. He was asleep, breathing shallowly, and his usually gentle face looked very cold at the moment. I remembered how skilled my brother was. When I was bullied by the chubby kid next door as a child, my brother found out and secretly learned martial arts. He would always be able to beat them up whenever they bothered me. Those few delinquents were no match for my brother if it weren't for me. Thinking about this, tears uncontrollably streamed down my face again. I stared at my brother's pale face, lost in my thoughts. My brother had always been good to me, but I had been upset with him. He only cared about me, we weren't even blood related, we grew up together from childhood. Did I really have no other feelings for my brother? I was just feeling a little uneasy, finding it hard to accept the change in our relationship, but I could adapt. As long as my brother could get better, I could adapt. I thought to myself in confusion. In the middle of the night, my brother indeed developed a fever, his temperature was high, and he started talking incoherently. He would call out "Cece" one moment and "Guai Guai" the next. Those were the nicknames my brother used to call me. Even when he's sick, he was thinking about me. Following the doctor's instructions, I brought cold water to wipe my brother's body. After wiping his hands and feet, hesitating for a long time, I carefully opened my brother's shirt. What met my eyes were the clear and solid patterns of my brother's abdominal muscles. My face instantly turned red, and as I hastily wiped a few times with the cloth, I was about to cover him back up. But the next moment, my hand holding the cloth was suddenly grabbed. With a hoarse and gentle voice, my brother said softly, "Cece, wiping like this won't reduce the fever." Following my brother's guidance, I carefully wiped his body completely. When I went to fetch water, I felt dizzy and lightheaded, as if walking on clouds. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. My face was as red as a cooked shrimp. After lingering in the bathroom for nearly half an hour, I finally, cautiously made my way back to the ward. My brother seemed to be asleep with his eyes closed, and I subconsciously let out a sigh of relief. Who would have known that in the next moment, I heard my brother say, "Is Cece blushing again?" I froze for a moment and hastily retorted, "No way." My brother paused for a moment, his tone drawn out as if filled with a hint of regret. My heart softened, and I quietly added, "Brother, if you know, just keep it to yourself, okay?" My brother chuckled softly. After a short while, he murmured, "We, Cece, are really cute." My ears instantly turned red. My brother's body temperature had already dropped. It was late into the night. In the VIP ward, there was a big bed and a sofa. I tucked my brother in, then turned to walk towards the sofa. However, I heard my brother's voice from behind, saying, "The sofa is cold, Cece, come sleep on the bed." I froze in my tracks. My brother continued, "Don't worry, Cece, I won't do anything. I promise to keep my word. I just haven't spent time with you in so long, and I miss you a bit. Considering my illness tonight, would you stay with me, Cece?" The promise he referred to was that he would move back to the sofa unless I agreed. I hesitated for a moment, but eventually walked towards the big bed. It was spacious, but I curled up at the edge, still separated from my brother by a person's distance. I waited with my eyes open for over 10 minutes, but my brother didn't seem to have any intention of talking to me or making any other moves. I couldn't tell if I was relieved or disappointed. I rolled up in the blanket, closed my eyes, and tried to sleep. I heard the sound of him turning over behind me. I blinked. Another sound, though it was a completely ordinary sound. In the silent night, it sounded particularly ambiguous. I could hear my brother's faint breathing. A long time passed. I sighed. Feeling a slight sourness in my nose, turned around, and hugged his waist from behind. "Brother, I miss you too." On the third day, Victor came to see his brother holding flowers. I received him expressionlessly. After a while, Victor asked me to go outside and apologized to me with a guilty look on his face, but I just stared at him coldly. "Victor, don't come looking for me again in the future. I don't want to have any relationship with you," I said. Victor widened his eyes slightly, looking hurt. "Why? Maria, you won't even give me a chance to pursue you?" I furrowed my brows. Admittedly, I couldn't say anything about his one-sided pursuit. "But I already have a boyfriend." "Who? Does your brother know about you dating? Did he approve?" I asked coldly. Meeting my gaze, Victor was stunned for a moment, suddenly looking incredulous. Your boyfriend wouldn't happen to be your brother, would he? I remained silent, handed him the flowers he brought, and turned back to the ward. From the corner of my eye, I saw my brother seemingly standing at the door of the ward and quickly retracting as I turned around. In the afternoon, his parents rushed over from Seattle. Inside the ward, I was feeding my brother fruits. In front of his dad and mom, he actually stuck out his tongue and licked my finger. His father and mom exchanged a complex look. Christian, Cece, you too? Father, mother, I was planning to tell you after the new year, my brother said softly, gently squeezing my hand, but since you're here, let's not postpone it any longer. Cece and I are together. As soon as he finished speaking, his father slammed the lid of the thermos on his head. You rascal! Are you bullying Cece? In my impression, his father Lou had always been gentle, and it was the first time I saw him so angry. I quickly waved my hands and said, No, my brother, Christian and I are in love. He didn't bully me. My brother didn't make a sound after being hit, just held my hand tighter. Go ahead and hit me if you must, but no matter what you say, I won't give up on Cece. His father, upon hearing this, wanted to step forward and give him a slap, but luckily he was stopped by his mother. What are you doing? Weren't you fond of Cece and always wanted her to stay in the Edward family forever? Now that Cece is Christian's wife, isn't that a good thing? I'm just afraid this little rascal has done something outrageous. Don't you understand Christian's temperament? He would never want to harm Cece. The older brother nodded in agreement, of course. In the end, after unanimous agreement from the elderly couple and the older brother, they decided to transfer all the assets under the older brother's name to me. This way, if the older brother really bullies me in the future, I have financial security. From now on, this matter can be considered settled. The day the older brother was discharged from the hospital, he drove himself. I opened the passenger door. Just as I sat in the car, the older brother leaned over and deeply kissed me by pinching my chin. I immediately pushed him away. The older brother held my hand and whispered in my ear, Don't move, Cece. Let me kiss you, I miss you. That being said. But bro, mom and dad are sitting in the back of the car. His father's face turned blue, but his mother had a knowing smile. Life with the older brother was not much different from before. It's just that the older brother's possessiveness grew stronger, and he would hug and kiss me for a long time every time he went out or came back home. He even insisted on sleeping together. Of course, he said he wouldn't do anything to me before marriage, but the older brother is an adult man, and after holding back for over 20 years, he is a man with normal needs. It was painful, yet pleasurable. Fortunately, such a life came to an end the year I graduated from university. Just after graduation, the older brother eagerly held our wedding and obtained the marriage certificate. The wedding was grand, and the older brother was busy all day. I thought he would be exhausted, but when we returned to the room, he looked even more spirited, the gentle eyes now showing a faint crimson light. Oh my God, is it still possible to escape now?